Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this breaking edition of the Bengal Tiger Recruiting Podcast. I'm Billy Embody. With me is Shea Dixon because it's the third commitment of the week for the Tigers. Started off with Joel Rogers out of West Feliciana, the four-star safety. They got Kylan Billiot out of Terrebonne. Just offered him at camp. Well, another prospect that picked up a new offer from LSU, who also came to camp last week, just announced his commitment to the Tigers. Ondre Evans out of Nashville CPA announced that he's headed to play in Baton Rouge. And Shea, out of all the prospects LSU has committed so far in this class, I don't know about you, but this might be my favorite.
Oh, I like it. All right, first off, let me brag. I may never hit 5 for 5, but I did go 3 for 3 this week, all sitting on 90% confidence scores on the all-on-3 RPM. Shout out to the LSU staff. That makes it a little easier when they get in on these targets and really lock them in ahead of decision dates and aren't having to figure it out in the 11th hour. But Ondre Evans, as you said, wraps up what is a very busy week for LSU. And I don't know if you're pulling up his profile or not for the YouTube folks, Billy. There's a disparity here in between how the industry views Ondre Evans at this stage and how we do it on three. At On 3, we've got him as a top 100 prospect, the number one player in Tennessee, and knocking on the door of a top 10 cornerback nationally. He came to LSU camp, and Billy, this is in June, just a week ago. He had already picked up the offer, but they said, come down, I want to see you work out. And he had just picked up the offer, and it had been Bama, Georgia, LSU, all those teams offering in a very short span. He tests well, he measured well, and then he went out to camp and looked the part of the best cornerback at camp, regardless of age. And as he now goes from a guy who NC State and others were on, Tennessee knocking on the door with him, to getting LSU, Bama, Georgia offers, he quickly shut things down, setting that decision date, even shuffling up his official visit plans. Now that he's committed, we can confirm he will be on campus this weekend for an official visit at LSU. Robert Steeples loved him, LSU's cornerbacks coach. The defensive staff was high on him, and Brian Kelly signed off on it. This is one where I think that they like the kid off the field as much as they do on the field. And with what they've seen from his track stuff, he's a 10-5 guy in the 100, what they saw on film, and then what they got to see in person, working him out in camp and putting him through a combine setting. You couple all that with a high GPA, high character kid who they sat down with and had extended conversations, and they said, hey, we want to get this one done now. The Evans camp feels good about it. LSU feels good about it. And this is about as quickly as you can wrap up a recruitment from an out-of-state perspective, Billy. They went from offered to set a decision date to camping to committing within the span of about 2 weeks.
This is when it gets easy on us. When I think too, and it wasn't the same as watching somebody get an offer or somebody commit on the spot in person at camp. But you and I both spoke with, multiple members of Ondre Evans camp. I talked to Ondre right after camp. You talked to him. I mean, you could tell it really impressed him because he came in the day before camp too and got around the staff, spent that whole time around Baton Rouge, and then woke up and camped. I mean, and was awesome and enjoyed his time working with Robert Steeples. You could just tell that things not necessarily changed because we didn't get to talk to him before, see how his demeanor was, but LSU just knocked this one out of the park so much that we could tell it resonated with him on such a level. And look, at that time, he said, hey, I'm going to take my NC State and my Michigan official visits, and I'm going to try to work in my LSU official visit. I am, but I don't know when yet. Alabama and Georgia were in there. He drops his top 5, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's locking things down. So, I mean, this is a masterclass on how to do it. If you're LSU, a kid that runs really well, he's got the 10.5, I believe. He had a sub 4.5 at camp. He just looks the part. I think he's somebody that, for those people that say we don't bump prospects up, I think we're going to bump them up even more.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll leave that up to Charles and Cody on the rankings team, but certainly as a top 100 prospect right now, you feel very good about him early on. You mentioned you may like him as your favorite guy in the class at the moment. What I do think makes this very interesting, and we talked about this on the recruiting podcast at the latter end of the week, Billy, is what it means for the cornerback board. And right now, LSU has their first out-of-state commitment early on at corner was from Zion Ferguson, a kid coming out of Georgia. He's also made a lot of visits. He's still got an eye on other schools. Like, does he ultimately end up in the class or not? I think if you're LSU, you move forward saying, we're going to operate on guys who we feel like can play here. And if Zion signs, then great. If not, and he flips somewhere else, then we had other guys ready to roll in the class. So I look at the guys that I feel very good about sticking come signing day. That's Wallace Foster out of New Orleans, who's going to play nickel for him as a corner, and who I really liked at camp. He's coming off of an injury this past year. He looked healthy. He moved well, looked confident working out at LSU 7-on-7. A little bit of a stock up there moment for me to be able to watch him healthy again. And then you've got a guy now, I should say, and Juwan Johnson, who flipped from Colorado to LSU. We ranked him as was an athlete now at corner. He plays quarterback for LCA, one of the best players in the state, really, honestly, pure athlete wise. We saw him at LSU camp. He was playing quarterback the whole time at 7-on-7, but he was your kind of no doubt, and he can play some nickel, but he's your corner to start. Now you add Ondre Evans. My question becomes, Billy, and this is something Robert Steeples will have to figure out and answer, but you've got Jalen Crawford on campus this weekend for a visit. He's someone that for a year now, as you mentioned on the podcast earlier this week or in the latter part of the week, that a year ago he had left, and most people kind of talked about him being a silent commitment to LSU. Now, he never went public. A year later, he's got LSU, Auburn, Florida schools he's looking at. But Kai Bates has emerged now, much like Ondre Evans did, as someone through the spring and summer now that they're very high on, and LSU feels like, hey, we may have a real shot to get. You still got Wardell Mack as the best defensive player in Louisiana, not named Dominic McKinley, still available, playing over at Warren Easton. He can play some corner or safety for you. He's versatile. And then there's others. Kobe Black is one of the best, corners in the country. He'll be back on campus for an official visit and also be back on campus this summer. When you've got all these different guys in the mix, what do you do? And Ondre Evans, I thought, was a big domino to drop. We'll see what Kai Bates does. But Jalen Crawford has a commitment date set. He's on campus this weekend. Does that go Auburn's way? Does that go Florida's way? Does he somehow get into Clemson's class? Or does Robert Steeples say, hey, let's add him too and keep it moving? I think that's going to be one of the more intriguing storylines here over the next few weeks.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I think the good thing is you have a guy who is a true cornerback number one, a true CB1 in your class right now in Ondre Evans. And I think that's important because now you can kind of play with house money in the sense of, yes, like you talked about, this is still a multi-year rebuild at corner.
Yes.
And LSU needs to stockpile talent. And I'm the first one to say, don't land X really good player and then say, okay, well, it's fine if you just get whoever after that. You still need to stack talent at every position as much as you can. But you're in such a good spot now with Ondre Evans. You're in a good spot with Wardell Mack. You've got some of those other guys you talked about committed. I mean, if you can come away with Kai Bates, sweet, awesome, great. You're playing as a dark horse for Kobe Black, so that's a nice position to be in sometimes as a staff, kind of recruiting and trying to pull somebody like that out of Texas. I think the interesting thing will be with Kobe Black is, his brother is one of those kids who played at Oklahoma State. He's played in the Big 12. He knows what that's like. He's telling him to go to the highest level, and can LSU kind of use that to really push themselves up? Because Kobe's kind of one of those kids that doesn't really do too many interviews. He doesn't really talk too much about what he's truly feeling. So I wonder if 2 visits, especially one at the end of July for LSU, and then an early official visit in the fall, can be enough to push them up into being a major, major contender there, which would be a nice surprise in this recruiting class. So if you came away with Kai Bates, you came away with Kobe Black, either or none, you still have Ondre Evans already committed. So it's a good spot to be in for this class, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you look at even Billy with Kai Bates coming up. He's got an official visit this weekend to Tennessee. Then he'll be at LSU. And there was a time where he said, after that, I'll shut it down. Well, he visited Bama earlier this month. I would say even more so after the Ohio State visit he took. He said, man, I'm really getting a lot of interest this spring and summer. Maybe I do take it to the fall. Can LSU convince him after next weekend? Hey, let's stick with the original plan. Let's shut things down after the summer. Let's get this one done and in the books. You see, he's ranked as the number 16 corner by the On3 industry rankings. It'll be fun to watch this one play out because I want to stress this again. LSU has one corner on roster who is a high school signee that was on the roster a year ago, LaTerrence Welsh. That's it. Coming out of Acadiana, he's now played special teams last year, but he'll be a redshirt freshman or in his second year of college this year. They only signed one true corner this past cycle. That was Jeremiah Hughes out of high school, coming all the way out of Vegas. Yes, they signed a bunch of guys, whether it's Ashton Stamps or Toviano, that can play corner, but they were high school safeties, and they could help a safety room that also needs depth. So if I'm LSU, yes, Kai Bates is out there. Yes, Jalen Crawford's out there. Yes, Wardell Mack's out there, Kobe Black. I'm going after all of them still, because even if you've got Juwan Johnson and Ondre Evans and Wallace Foster on board, and you've got a Zion Ferguson outside the state, I'd feel a lot better if that number just kept growing, because you do not need to grab a transfer at corner and do it, times 4 in back-to-back years like you've done. Now they had to do it. They just did it again this past cycle. Stack up on transfer corners because they need immediate help. That's not a long-term solution. LSU knows that. So I expect the cornerback total to be high with high school signees this cycle. And I just do think that the next 3 to 4 weeks is going to tell us a lot about who those guys are.
Yep. All the more reason why you need to follow it on thebengaltiger.com. Pick up a subscription today. You get a free Founders Club hat. You can try us free for 7 days as well. It's a busy official visit weekend coming up. Multiple back on campus in Baton Rouge, as well as elite camp coverage Friday night, Saturday morning. So be sure to jump on board and follow it with Shea Dixon, myself, Matthew Bruni. We'll have you all covered at thebengaltiger.com. So been a busy week on the podcast front, Shea. We will have plenty more next week. So be sure to lock in and hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. We appreciate all you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Bengal Tiger podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone. And congrats, Shea, on 3 for 3 this week.
Yeah, I did it.